Hi, Hales. Uh, no, oh God. Uh, Hi, Alma. You have to. I want you to come in. So you have to click that little Alma. You have to click that little plus box. I mean, not plus. Uh, Hi, Alma. Did you see that I invited you? Where it has the two people with the plus. I don't know if you can see that, Alma. Hi, everybody. How are you? I'm trying to bring Alma in. Um, So you see the two people down at the bottom of the screen, Alma, and then there's a plus sign. Um, well, on mine it doesn't have a camera icon, Haley. I invited her. Guys, I'm sorry. Hold on. We're just having some technicals. You know how that goes. Um, Alma, are you getting the notifications? Yes, it's to the right of the comment box. Correct. Hey, Key. To the right of the comment box where you see the little people plus. Also next to that is a like comment bubble with a question mark in it. I didn't mean for you to get a notification, Haley. I just invited Alma in. Um, did you see it, Alma? Guys, hold on. Sorry. We're just getting our technicals together. Oh, okay. Oh, excellent, Haley. Thank you. I'm glad you did. We're just waiting for okay. Well, I really don't have to resend, Alma. If you just look at the bottom of the screen, right? There's the comment box, then there's a plus, which is for questions. Then next to it is two little icons with two little people and a plus or a camera, and it should you can come in, but I'll send you another one. I just sent it, Alma. I just sent it. So guys, I'm going to tell you how I met Alma. I believe everything is divine, right? My friend, we have a mutual friend. Her name is Dr. There she is.
Hi. Hi.
Alma's on. Hi, Alma.
How are you?
I am well. I am well. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it, guys. Yes, I'm glad that you got the notification that we were doing this. I was just Alma telling them that how we met, and we have a mutual friend, Dr. Doretta Rhodes. She had a book signing for Dr. Cheryl Williamson, and we were both there. And Alma was waiting for her daughter to come by, and her phone was dead, so she couldn't call, she couldn't get an Uber or anything. So I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "This is what I'm doing. I'm waiting for my kid, whatever." And she's not a kid, by the way. She's not a kid, but she's a grown-up kid. And I said, "Well, I'll just drive you home." And that's how we met. And I found out that she's this accomplished and amazing woman. And when I started doing these lives, oh, thank you, Haley. When I started doing these lives for shiftHER, I was like, what better person than Alma to talk to us today about her amazing foundation Alma Domestic Violence Foundation and domestic violence. Right, Alma?
Yes, thank you. Yes,
My God, I'm super excited. So I want to kind of getting my notes up. So why don't you tell us what the Alma Domestic Violence Foundation is and what you do?
absolutely. So I have to give you all the backstory of why it even exists.
Yep.
Uh, and unfortunately, by the time I was 14 years old, I had already come through child abuse, sexual assault. I watched domestic violence play in my household since as far as I can remember. And I already at 14 had my personally owned domestic violence. I was in a domestic violence relationship with another 14-year-old boy.
Wow.
And where I received my first set of black eyes um, from being in that relationship. So after watching this, experiencing so much of that in my life, and then the residuals of that from the sexual assault from an adult, from that was at 13, at 15, being a victim of my own, an additional sexual assault through rape. So just going through all the different layers and not wanting children, or didn't understand why there were not resources out there. You know, we we come unfortunately from a community where what goes on in the house, what it stays in the house,
Mm-hmm.
and so
That's right.
it's taboo to talk about. So I just always wonder why, when I had my incident, no one stopped, no adults stopped to help me, no adult stopped to say, "Hey, here are some things that you can go through." Matter of fact, I didn't see resources for my mother. Yeah. So when I had my first child, daughter, at 2022, I was adamant that she would not repeat this cycle. And whatever that meant for me, to understand the cycles of domestic violence, to learn about it, to understand why people stay in those types of situations, that was my lifelong journey. I didn't understand back then that that was the trajectory that God had me on, but here we are with Alma Domestic Violence Foundation. We're in year 19. Uh,
Wow.
yes. And so when you talk about all things domestic violence, we are all things domestic violence.
Yeah.
I said, okay, so what do you all do? Everything.
And what
And
does
when
that
I mean
mean? What does that mean when you say everything?
Yeah, when I mean everything, so number one, understanding domestic violence. The number one reason why people are in domestic violence is finances, lack of,
Wait.
or control of.
So the number, I just want to make sure that we all understand what you just said. The
Hmm.
number one reason why
Hmm.
people, male or female,
Yes,
are in domestic violence relationships is because of finance,
yes, finances, either the lack of finances or the control.
the lack thereof, or control.
Right. So we've had clients where you are the breadwinner, you are bringing it all in, but your abuser is the person that controls that money, controls the decisions that you made. Domestic violence is all about control.
Hmm.
It's completely about control. And so pulling the layers back, understanding, okay, what is it when we look at, let's say, talk about domestic violence and children. I know we're going to jump into
Yeah,
all this, but
but go ahead. Go
look
ahead.
at
Do it.
women that have children. I'll even say men, because we see both types of clients there. It doesn't matter. And they are with an abuser that controls the money, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's hard for them to leave. They can't leave. Well, I mean, one, where they're going to stay. If that abuser has been controlling the finances of what gets paid, how much food you get to eat, what your children are allowed to do, a lot of times they can't leave, and that is one of the biggest barriers. That's why it goes back to finances, because that money is controlled by that person. The domestic violence that we know, the that most people associate domestic violence with the abuse. That is the last
The
part of
physical part is what you're talking about, right?
the last.
So that's what we associate everything with domestic violence as it relates to it being
Right.
physical, right?
Right.
And you're saying that that's definitely not the majority, statistically, majority of domestic violence that's happening. It's happening via
Yeah.
finance, right? So
So,
if this is the case,
mhm.
right? So that has to be well thought out in my mind. This is what I'm thinking. Somebody who's an abuser, right?
Mhm.
Like somebody just doesn't say, "Here's my bank account information, here's my everything," and just take it and run with it, and then right? Like it
No.
feels like the abuser has to be quite pathological about what they're doing. No.
Right. So we talk about manipulation. There's a lot of manipulation that goes in, and understand the physical aspect is normally the last part of domestic violence. So there are so many other
Layers.
wa- warning signs. Excuse me, red layers, red flags.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with the control of it may just be um he starts to isolate, he or she begins to isolate you from family and friends. A lot of times people get in, especially nowadays, people get in new relationships, and it's all about them and that person. And if they're not paying attention, they can easily start to get pulled away from family and friends. And people say, well, why is that? Well, number one, because that isolates that victim from hearing a voice of other people. That isolates them from having other people say, hey, you might not see this because you're so involved, but here are some things that are happening that we see that we don't think is healthy. um, whether that is calling your name, jokingly, playing
Mm.
name jokingly. This person taps you a lot, hits you a lot, and I'm not talking about the fist kind. I'm talking about,
Right. Mm-hmm.
pinching,
Mm-hmm.
um, little things like that. To someone on the outside may say, I know you think that's cute that they're calling you all the time, wanting to know where you are. And to you, it may feel like, oh, that's just care, right? Um, but when you are being isolated from other people, a lot of times you're not paying attention to the warning signs or the things that outside people see.
Right. And it looks like even our guests get that, right? So Heather is saying manipulation is key to the abused person in a specific mindset, right?
Right.
So I guess the manipulation is key,
The
right?
control and manipulation is very key.
Right. Right. And again, there's just so many layers to it, and I can't. For me, it's hard for me to conceptualize,
Mhm.
right? But as I've shared, my husband grew up in a very volatile environment as a child, right? And he is very, we don't, he does not yell, raise his voice, none of that, right? There, like he embraces like me being around my friends and family. Like, so I don't even know. My father was very loving. My mother was very loving. Like, I don't know, right, what that looks like. So that's why I wanted to have you on, because I feel like every most people don't know what it looks like, right? Like you just said that most people think that it's the physical up front, but there's so many layers before that, or red flags that happen before that that get to that extreme,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes, you have the mental, you have the verbal abuse. A lot of people don't talk about the verbal. We live in a society where it's okay to call someone out of their name.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That leads on to being verbally abused, and you don't know it because you have made that well, society has made that common, and they've made it okay. When we talk about their sexual takes place. There, financial, we've seen educational abuse, even religious abuse, and that stuff all comes before the physical.
Well, what do you mean by religious abuse? What
Where
do you
you
mean?
in a relationship with someone that knows you are highly religious, um, and or they are, and they use those types of tactics to control you, meaning, let's say they curse you out.
Mm-hmm.
God says you have to forgive me. He forgives you, so you have to forgive me. And it's just a manipulative way to keep someone
Mhm.
in a relationship. We have seen, again, when we talk about power and control, we see a lot of abusers that sit in those type of job roles, whether that is being a judge, whether that's being a police officer, whether we see a lot of domestic violence in churches that we don't talk about. Again, because this is a power and control thing, right?
Right.
And so talk about feeling like in a lot of religions that you're supposed to humble yourself to that person. They make a mistake. Uh, Abusers have learned through manipulation how to keep you tied into that relationship based off of the religion.
Wow. Like I would have
A lot
never.
of layers, a lot of layers to this
No,
thing.
there's a lot of layers, and I feel like, I mean, it's really nothing to joke about, right? Like uh, people are caught in situations and they don't even see it. Like they don't see it coming toward them, and then they're stuck,
Right.
right? And that's what I hear you saying. Um, so you spoke about why you started the foundation, just from your own experience at a very young age, being exposed and being in a violent relationship,
Yes.
right? So when you started this foundation 19 years ago, you knew what you wanted, but how do you build an infrastructure to support a city, a state, the country, the world? Because that's what you're doing. You're support. It's a global organization, correct? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you do that, and how did you get there?
And it's funny that you should ask that. My undergrad degree is computer science, and I've never done a day because my passion was, why did I grow up in a household that, one, as I'm watching the Cosbys, which is peaceful, loving, that was not my reality, and nobody said anything. Why?
Okay.
When I got my first set of black eyes at 14 years
Mm.
old, 14 years old, when the incident happened, I got out of his car, walked into the mall, because at the time I was this teen model, and sat in two adults' chair, a makeup artist and a hairstylist. And I had a black eye, sorry, not one, but two, a cut across my face. And not one adult asked me, what happened? How can I help you? But instead, they took makeup and put it inside of an open wound. So
Wow.
experiencing those things and then turning around, when I talk about the sexual assault, I dealt with a lot of anger because of watching the Cosbys. Everybody's happy. This is not your reality. And I had so much anger because no one seemed to, they could visualize, they see it, but no one tried to help. Right. And so when you're 14, you're getting ignored by adults that see, okay, clearly this is a child coming here with black eyes, whether it's an abusive partner or something has happened, but you don't ask why. That that bothered me. Uh, Again, the sexual, and I'm going to take you back the sexual assault. When I started having so much anger, it showed in school. um, it showed around peers. People just was like, oh, she's just an angry child. And so my parents took me to, I know you all like the boot camp, right? You know, like the teenage boot camp, the scare me bad, scare me bad.
Really? Oh, scared straight, like scared
Here's-
straight.
They took me to the juvenile judge, and it was supposed to be, she has these anger issues. Um, can you talk to her? Can you deal with her? And so my parents left me in this judge's office. And as he's sitting, I'm sitting in a chair and he's over me screaming in my face. I mean, just going at it. He leans down and then he kisses me in my mouth. And I am 13 years old and I scream. But of course, my parents are out. They think I'm screaming because this, again, what do we talk about? Manipulation and control. This person in authority, right? Um, is so-called scaring me straight. Okay.
And further and further manipulating and further being more predatory behavior, more abuse. It's just piling on. And this is 13, 14 years old.
And that's just 13, 14 years old. And then to continue in a relationship with a 14-year-old who, one, saw his father beat his mother all the time. This is what I mean about we began making this stuff normalized. And so to answer your question, after going through all of these things and not one adult,
Right. So
there was
you fought for it. So what you're saying is you fought to make sure that this was going to happen, that Alma was happening. Right.
Alma. And again, it was because of my daughter. When I had my child, I said no more. I went on as I was in at my younger age, in my younger ages outside of college. I worked for a university, and I learned, so many females would come stop by my office, and behind closed doors, they would be like, well, Ms. Davis, I went through this type of thing when I was a child or growing up. There was no resources. That became the common thread that
Right.
had so many, whether it was child abuse coming out of a household violence, whether it was sexual abuse, the whole manipulation, all of these things tied into domestic violence. I kept saying, wait a minute, are you telling me that nobody's asking these questions? Nobody out. And
Right.
what triggered everything, I would never forget this. That's how I know this was my calling.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I told some young girls, I said, listen, you all keep coming to me wanting to talk to me about your domestic or your abuse. Meet me this week. We'll have a small little setting. You all can come. Let's just talk together because you have more things in common than you. When I showed up that night, like 2 or 3 days later, there were almost 100 female students in that room, in that waiting
From those few girls that came to
from
talk to you.
every sorority. I mean, it didn't matter who you were. And I began to say, wow, this is
This is
happening.
it.
Nobody's doing anything about it.
This is it.
Why? Why is there a room full of almost 100 young adults about something and nobody else is talking about it? And so that's what said, no, I'm going to do something
And
about
that
it.
was 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was a well over 20 years ago because I was in my early 20s, late 20s. I'm 50 now.
Well,
But
well, welcome. Welcome. Right. Welcome. We're all here.
yes,
We're all here doing that. We're
we
all
all,
doing the 50. Right.
and the more and more, Stacy, that I began to dive into this, I did not come knowing the answers, but I began to do a lot of research. I began to study. I began to have conversations. I began to look at organizations that were out there. What were they doing right? What were they doing wrong? Um, and my main thing was, let's get to the underlining reason of why people stay in domestic violence, which goes back to that financial piece. Um, why do they stay? And what are the things that they're needing to break the cycle? Because it's just like an onion. You have to pull back these layers to find out what makes you stay. What trauma have you gone through? I tell everybody most abusers were victims first.
Okay. All right. So victims,
Most
most
abusers were
abusers were victims
first.
first.
Though, because those are learned behaviors, right? Whether we look at my 14-year-old abuser, that was a learned behavior in his household. He saw that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know of any household that has domestic violence and children that are in the household are not exposed or are part of child abuse. Okay. So that is a learned behavior. And so they repeat, you only have two choices. You repeat the cycle or you break it.
Yeah, Shauna just said that. She said most of them don't feel worthy of better, people that are abused, and she shared that her mother was
Right.
one.
Right. Worthy of better, or going back to why I started our foundation,
Mm-hmm.
have the resources to know how to get out. or what to break. So you ask, so what do we do at our foundation? When I say all things domestic violence, understanding that finances is the number one reason why people stay,
Mm-hmm.
or financial literacy. You hear people all the time, oh, everybody does financial literacy. No, we take it to a depth of, we have a 6 weeks program, and normally runs 8 or 9 weeks, though we have to tell people, I'm sorry, we have to, cut our classes. The reason being is we dive deep into, if you're used to having control your finances or your money, a lot of people don't know how to budget.
Right.
If we give you that freedom, um, let's say you're coming out of domestic violence situation and we give you $1 million, what will you do with it? Do you know what to do with it? Or will you spend it and end up back in the same cycle, right? Where you are depending on someone else and they're controlling you, and your finances to keep you in a bad relationship. So we look at all of those things. When people come out of domestic violence, a lot of times their credit is shot. Why? Because that abuser used up their credit. They make things and that in their name.
Mm-hmm.
And so we sit with you, with our bankers, with our team, and we literally go through every person on your, to help you get back on your feet and get things off that are done through your abuser. So that's just one aspect. We understand too from domestic violence, the mental space. During COVID, everybody got the whole mental health bandwagon, which is great. But we were addressing mental health well before COVID, because that is a major issue with people dealing with domestic violence. When you hear about PTSD, people that go through trauma, you still deal. It's very common domestic violence for you to see someone that's having PTSD. Their triggers, um, situations, smells, depending upon the different type of trauma that you have experienced.
Mm-hmm. I like the fact that you just said smell, right? Because I'm very smell sensitive,
Mm-hmm.
and but in a
Right.
positive way, right? And just to think that there are human beings that experience their traumas to that level where they smell something and could send them to another
Yes.
place is just like I don't know. I just that's hard. That's really hard to ingest, right?
Yes. But,
Human
but
beings
but
feel
it happens, and so we truly focus on your mental health and helping you get back in a healthy place. What I mean by this, we give you tools, right? Tools to stay in a tools to see red flags, or tools to say, hey, how do I handle a situation, or when we talk about mental health, how do I, if I see something happening, how do I cope? Right? A lot of people times we have coping mechanisms, and we have a 4-step program, and we are one of the few organizations that we do license. We have licensed therapists on our staff. Uh,
okay.
do free license therapy for
1 year. Wow.
1 year. And our first step is what we call healthy relationships. And we do it as a group so that you can understand you are not alone. Remember when we talked about that isolation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Most domestic violence clients, they feel like nobody understands them, because that's what that abuser has it's a lot of brainwashing. That's what they told you. Nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to believe you. Again, you've been isolated from
Right.
most of your family and friends, right? Um, and so it's helping you pull back those layers and say, okay, why am I making the decisions that I'm making? What traumas, what things was I exposed to early in my life, that I might not have addressed, that make me feel like I have to stay in these situations, right? Or what drew me to this person? What was it about this person that attracted me? Uh, and I'm gonna give you a couple realistic examples that we look at. A lot of times we don't address domestic violence until it hits the news, right? The celebrity
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the Ray Rice situation,
Ugh.
Everybody remembers that NFL player, the young lady who is now his wife, right? She is now his
Did
wife.
everybody hear that? So you remember Ray Rice
Hmm.
in the elevator.
Hmm.
Everybody remembers that. It was a big deal. We all
We
saw
all,
it, right? Okay. And they're married now.
they're
So
married,
after he
right?
tossed her around in the elevator,
Which was
right?
the first incident,
No, it was not.
right?
Right.
It
So let's make sure we clarify that, right?
right? First time you've been caught on camera,
Hmm.
um, that we know of, but definitely not the first incident. And you say, wait a minute, you said his wife. How do you go from that to being a wife? And that happened in a short period of time. They got married after that. And in a healthy family, other ladies like, wait a minute, did she have a mother, father around who allowed this to happen? It goes back to the financial piece.
Mm.
The the father and mother were around, but they were being taken care of financially. And so they stayed in the financial situation and walked the door to down the aisle. Again, going back to finances. Right?
Okay. So I want to ask a question here, right? I'm just asking. I'm not, these things are running through my mind as you're talking. So he did what he did,
Mm-hmm.
right? It was aggressive. We all saw it. It was horrific.
Mm-hmm.
So do people recover? Do they? I don't know. I'm not looking. It's not recovery, I guess. So to me, the behavior sounds predatory to me. Like you're a predator, right? If this is what you do, because you had to think it out, you did it, and you continue to do it. So that means that you're thinking about it. Do people recover from that? Do they? So she married him. Does that mean he's still doing it?
Well, you really don't know. And again, her situation too, from the depths of understanding, that became tumultuous on both sides. Both of them became
So
aggressive.
they're both abusers.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. What I can say, what I do know is, can abusers be rehabilitated? Yes,
Hmm.
but it does not happen overnight. It's
Okay.
extensive amount of therapy. Just as we pull back the layers and we do therapy with people on the, and I hate using the word victim side, but this on the survivor side, right?
Hmm.
Um, if it takes that amount of time, we don't let you go until you get at a year, right? And we have worked with you a year, and a lot of times it's still not enough time, right? So imagine if you are on the flip side of that and you've been exposed to this for years, right? You cannot be rehabilitated in a short period of time. And to jump into a marriage, it's hard for me to believe that both of them got the therapy and the healing that they both needed to be in a healthy place.
And that makes sense to me. And when you have, I guess, two people, when you have somebody that is is the person who's earning the
Yeah.
money, is the earner,
Yeah.
and a heavy earner. We're not talking about like they make a lot of money. He made a lot of money.
Yes.
And like you said, the entire family is reaping, right? Everybody on both sides are
Okay.
reaping, right? You're
Mhm.
saying that people overlook. So does that mean that the person who is the earner is actually manipulating everybody, and everybody, it feels like everybody's being victimized?
That more than likely, yes, but also remember, we've seen clients that the victim is actually the person that has earned all the fines. So it can go both ways. A manipulator and a controlling person can be either or. Okay.
It's
And
so much.
about, we've had clients that were CEOs and they can run an office, they can run a company, but when they get home, they don't run anything. Okay. Abuser, but that abuser is controlling everything, meaning telling you, giving you an allowance as an adult, giving you an allowance, telling you what you can spend on, what you cannot, what you can eat, what you cannot eat, what you can spend on your children, food wise. So again, it goes to so many different layers, but it's about that power and that control and ultimately the finance. So many people say, okay, well, why not? Goes back to finances. It's not that easy. If you don't have the finances to up and move, number one, we're in a society where homelessness is running rapid. There is no There are not a lot of places to go. There are not a lot of shelter. Most shelters are filled to capacity. We do a lot. One of the services we do through the foundation is we do a lot of rapid rehab. But is we will pay for clients that are in domestic violence situations that need emergency rental assistance, utilities, food. A lot of times we are working through them with TPOs and getting that abuser out. We were a part of a law was passed years ago called Marcy's Law, where people that were being victimized. I'm sorry, I'm getting that wrong. Marcy's Law. Well, a lot of times they weren't notified, but there was also a law just passed that we were a part of a couple of years ago, where if you were on a lease with your abuser, if you had a TPO, which is a temporary protective order, you can court and get that person moved out. Because back in the day, both of you all were going to get evicted, right? And it goes back to
Wow.
that victim being re-victimized, things of that nature. So one of the things that we do through the organization, and that's what I mean about we are all things domestic violence, we look at, okay, are you in need for us to help you that way? A lot of times, like I said, the shelters are maxed out, so we will help you if you're ready to leave, stay in an emergency facility, whether that's a hotel, until we can get you moved into a shelter. This year, we are working on additional housing for us to be able to have our own housing. But yeah, there are a lot of layers. I have to share though, so everybody can get a clear understanding and the magnitude of what we're talking about. Domestic violence is the number one issue in the LGBTQ plus community. It is the number one issue on college campuses. It is running rapid in high school. We call it dating violence. Pre-COVID, over 10 million kids a year, high school kids, were dealing with dating violence, domestic violence for teens. We have seen an incredible amount of abuse taking place with elderly, and especially those vulnerable populations that are dealing with long-term health illnesses. So when you talk about cancer, you talk about AIDS, if you were the breadwinner, now you're sick, that other person is taking into consideration, well, not taking into consideration your health, but more so how bills going to get paid. You got medical things going on, and they become abusive, whether that's verbal, whether that's physical. You talk about menopause. There is a link between menopause and domestic violence, because sexual violence is a part of domestic violence.
And we talked about this briefly. I think it's necessary that that's talked about. So when you just said sexual violence in a marriage.
Absolutely. It's domestic violence. Yes.
Like, it doesn't even sound like those things should be said together.
But it has
sexual violence in a marriage, right? So just dig just a little bit. Like, what does that mean?
If we talk about, again, I have to keep using these words so people we talk about power and control. There are marital relationships where that abuser will keep the woman impregnated to keep her there. Why? Because the more and more kids you have to have finances to support those children. And if your finances are being controlled by the other person, you end up having to stay. And so they will use sex and sexual assault, whether that's rape in a marriage, those different things, and continuously keep you impregnated. Um, yes, it happens. They will use the sexual terms of, you are my spouse, so you're supposed to have sex with me, whether you want to or not. We're in a marriage together. So all of these things take place when we talk about family violence, domestic violence, and a different layer. So that's what we keep going back to. There's so many different layers of domestic violence. It's not just, oh, I saw somebody get hit with a black eye. No, there are layers upon layers and things that happen before you even get to that. We have seen, and here's another thing people don't talk about. We have seen where clients stay in a relationship because of pets, because that abuser will say, hey, well, I'm going to do this to your dog. A lot of people's pets are
Wow. Wow.
And so through our organization, we have partnered with another organization that actually will take um, someone, if they're ready to leave out of a domestic violence situation, they will take their pet up to 3 months, where they don't have to worry about it until we get that client established. So, yeah, these are different layers, unfortunately, that we see with
I
domestic
just so, so you're helping extract people from their homes, make them safe.
violence.
You're providing resources to find new places to
Hmm.
live.
Hmm.
Also giving them tools to navigate through financial literacy,
Yeah,
etc. Right? Mental health support. So I guess somebody's tenure is a year with the Alma Domestic Violence Foundation. Is did I hear that right?
it can be a year. It can go longer, depending upon different programs that they're signed up for. Because not only do we do just the licensed therapy, we do art therapy. This summer, we're introducing water therapy. A lot of people don't know how to swim, but a lot of times victims are put into water situations by their abuser, and we want to make sure they know how to survive that, how to get out of there. So when I say all things domestic violence, we look at
Mhm.
every reason why someone is in that, and we want to be able to provide a solution. Uh, we're even looking into the deaf community. A large number of people in that community deal with domestic violence because they don't have they don't they're hearing impaired or feel like they don't have a voice. Um,
That voice, man, like you don't have a voice. And I mean, you don't have to, being hearing impaired is one thing, but when you feel like you don't have a voice in general, right, which I think is a big problem today, that a lot, especially women, don't feel like they have a
yes,
voice, and nobody's listening to where they are. I mean, I know I felt that way, not to this, of course, extreme, but sometimes you don't feel like your voice is being heard, right? And your needs are not being heard. Forget about being met. Nobody hears that you have a need, right? Regardless of where that is. And it sounds like your foundation for women that are in domestic violence situations is trying to plug that gap,
yes,
that heard,
yes,
that you're acknowledging what's happening to them, which is a big step because somebody's saying nothing's happening to you,
right,
right?
right,
Right, like you said, sitting in front of a makeup artist and they're just acting like nothing's going on, and you're a teenager,
right,
where the
right,
first instinct should be like, honestly, almost to call the police. Like, what's happening here?
right.
Why?
Because that's not normal for any teenager. But when I tell you this, our society has become so desensitized. When you turn on a TV and you see people fighting on TV, and you think that is again normal, um, so it means nothing when you see somebody fighting someone they're in a relationship. Um,
Right, and people pull out their cameras now versus trying to, not that you should insert yourself, but versus calling the authorities or involving somebody to help,
right,
right? We're pulling out our cameras and recording it, which is only amplifying the situation,
right, right,
especially if you're a violent human being and you're a predator,
right.
right? Like you're like, oh, yes, I'm important now, right? That's the way it feels to
Yeah,
me. Like I would think if people want to be watched, if you're watching, you have a camera and you're filming a fight.
right. And as a domestic violence survivor myself, it's embarrassing. You don't want everybody to know that that's what you're dealing with. So that's one of the reasons why people don't talk about it. When we look at statistically why one out of 7 women deal with domestic violence. Excuse me, I'm sorry, 1 out of 7 males. 1 out of 5, but only 95% of cases are reported. So if you bring in, I'm sorry, only 95%, I'm sorry, only 5% of cases are reported. So when you bring in the 95% that is not reported, the statistics are more like 1 out of 2 women, 1 out of 4 males, especially going back to it's the number one issue in so many different communities. So through our foundation as well, we work not only with women, but we work with males, and we also work with children. Our entry age before COVID was 13. Our entry age now is 8. Our youngest client during COVID was 7. So we had to move our entry age up to 8 to allow younger kids that are dealing with any type of because of family violence or domestic violence to get therapy, to get services that they need.
So is the system, because you deal nationwide, globally, so is the system, does the system have an infrastructure, meaning our government systems have the infrastructure to deal with these kinds of things that are happening? Like, so of course you're connected to governmental organizations, you're connected to the private sector as well, but is our government prepared, like locally, to deal with these types of things that are happening?
One of the things that we have seen is, there has to be more training that's taking place when we talk about law enforcement. A lot of times people don't want to call the police because we've seen so many cases where the actual victim gets arrested because of a lack of training that needs to happen with law enforcement. A lot of times that victim does not want to see the abuser hurt. Again, it goes back to that control, the manipulation. Again, if the abuser is like, how am I going to feed my kids? They're controlling my finances. Um, how are we going to pay the rent? So from that perspective, there is an opportunity additional training. One of the things that we have been fighting Congress with for the past year and a half is the cutting of funds, VOCA and VAWA funds. VAWA was set up for its office through federal for victims against women. Violence Against Women Act, but the funding keeps getting sliced. Shelters are back to capacity. Our organization, we're constantly having to turn people down due to funding because all of our services are free. Uh, so there needs to be some shifts. That's some of the things we are definitely working on. Some laws need to be changed to protect people that are dealing in these situations. Funding needs to stop being cut. We're always on the chopping board, even though there's such a need. Uh, so that's why education is important. Educating the legal systems continuously, getting in front of lawmakers to help them understand what is happening, what is taking place, coming up with programs showing that what we do is successful. Uh, and that's the only way I think we're going to continue to push the needle and try to make sure that the government and law enforcement is set up for success.
So yeah, so if you could wave your magic wand, how could how can how can Alma be helped? Like, what would make it better than it is already? Like, what can people do to support Alma? Like, if you had to wave your magic wand, I had one thing that people could do, all of us could do, to support your organization.
One, get behind us, whether that means from a financial perspective, a volunteer perspective. Again, we're looking at what the issues are and coming up with solutions. So as we look at here in Atlanta, the housing crisis, and it is a
It is a
crisis.
crisis.
We are working this fall again to try to roll out housing to support those that are in domestic. So getting behind those efforts, bring resources. So many different companies have employees that may want to do an employee match. Give. They have to spend their money, give, and the company will match. Send your employees out to help volunteer with our organization and some of the programs that we are. Not only do we work with individuals, but we provide services in several shelters across Georgia. So we're the ones that go in and work with the shelter population with the programs that we do. So if I had a magic wand, the first thing I would do would send $1 million to the organization so we can hire everybody and
Right.
continue the services were free.
Right.
But like I said, help us get to where we're going. Help us be creative. If you have land you want to donate, we'll take it.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
We see when people pass on and they might leave large sums of money to their animals or to other charities. We're here. We've been around for 19
That's
years,
right. That's right.
but we can't continue to provide free services if we don't have support, if we don't have financial support. It just won't happen. And when we're in a world, if the world did not get a taste of domestic violence during COVID, when you had people locked in houses, the numbers sky. We saw a 83% increase in clients during COVID, because you had people locked in the house. Um, you were there with your abuser if they were an abuser, or you just found out. I made 3 predictions for COVID. I said there would be a lot of pregnancy, check.
Check,
I said a lot of divorces, check.
check.
There'll be a lot of domestic violence. Again, when you add the stressors of finances, people were losing their jobs. You realize, hey, wait a minute, I only saw you a couple of hours a day. Now that you're in the house all the time, man, I don't like you like that. Arguing. But
Okay. Okay.
um, but if we didn't get a whiff of that, I tell everybody, my new thing is wait until AI comes in. And AI can be a positive thing, but when you get back to people will be losing their jobs, we go back to what did we say the number one reason was? Finances,
Finances.
lack of or control of. You will see the domestic violence numbers continue to rise.
Wow. It's mind blowing that there's just many layers to
Yeah.
me of this. Now, what there could be people that will listen to this after the fact, etc. Please tell everybody how to reach your organization, right?
Mhm.
And what they need to do to get in touch with you.
Okay. So it's the Alma Domestic Violence Foundation. Our website is www.alma, which is ALMA, D for domestic, V for violence, F for foundation.org. We're on every social media platform, including LinkedIn. If you look up Alma Domestic Violence Foundation, we have an 800 number. So we get clients from all over the country, outside of the country. If you are someone that is in need, you can send us a message, a private message via email, or send us a message via any of the social media platforms, or call our offices. And thank you, Haley, for putting that up.
Thank you, Haley.
Calling our offices to speak with one of our case managers to see how we can help you.
Alma, I have to tell you that again, I'm blown away. Number one, to hear that the youngest age of
Mm-hmm.
7 years old,
Mm-hmm.
being a victim of domestic violence. Like, if our children are growing up in this environment, all we're doing, all we're doing is we're repeating it. People like yourself did not, like my husband did not, right? But that's not the norm. It sounds like that's just not the norm. That usually, if you were abused, you will. Correct?
You have the propensity. You have a high, like I said, you only have two choices: to repeat it or to break it. And if you are not getting the help or the resources, again, this is one of those magic one things. We have to help educate people and show them that there are resources out there. If you're not getting those resources to deal with coming out of those situations, let's say even if you were exposed to it throughout your childhood, as I made a choice that seemed normal because there was no one teaching me otherwise. So had I had the opportunity of going through a program like ours, my choice would have been different. My song, maybe I might be singing a different song that I never went through. But because there's such a lack of resources, a lack of the different type of organizations that are offering a lot of the things that people need, they do unfortunately either repeat that cycle, or they find someone that feels comfortable, that fits that cycle, or fits that profile, because those are the filters that they are using to make different decisions.
It's just so overwhelming. Also, I saw on your website that you're having a run in October. Is that
Yes.
correct? So tell everybody
Thank
about that.
Okay, so we have a couple. We do 3 signature events a year. The first one is Dinner for Divas, and that's up in August. Dinner for Divas is one of my favorites. It's where we actually bring in. It used to be 150. Now it's 200 survivors, starting as young as 13, that live in shelters all across the state of Georgia, and they come in for a day. They absolutely have no clue of what they're there for. So we do everything from teach etiquette classes. They go through hair, makeup, wardrobe, nails. They have their own stylist. We have seamstress right there. They got all these formal things, and they don't know until they walk the red carpet that everybody in the room is there
Oh,
to honor them.
wow.
Because it's
That's all.
about your self-esteem. When you have been beat down,
Mm.
I don't care how how you think you look, um, or how someone else perceives you, you don't feel like you're beautiful. And so for us, if I can show you how beautiful you are on the outside, then I can pour into your inside.
Oh,
And that is our big dinner for Divas Gala coming up in August. And then October is National Domestic Violence Month. We were so blessed last year to kick off a weekend called Paint Atlanta Purple. We started it here, and that first weekend where we had our golf, which we'll be having, it's called Saving Survivors on the Green, because we want men to be engaged, we want
mhm.
women to give back. And then on that next day, that Saturday, we have our walk a mile in their shoes. The walk is so unique because it is a 5 mile run, a 1 mile walk. It's on the Atlanta Beltline. If you walk, you're partnered with a survivor, and that survivor shares a story with you. So you're truly walking a mile in their shoes, and
Wow.
the walk. And so we have seen so many lives changed and touched. We are very unique to where any event that we do, our two signature galas, there are rooms full of people that we've either serviced, or when you talk about 200 survivors in a room, you never know who you're sitting at a table with. Because domestic violence doesn't have a particular face. We have clients that got master's degrees, CEOs, so it doesn't have any type of um, demographic to it. But then if you're out and you're a walker or a runner, and someone's walking with you to tell you what they've gone through. So we've seen men come out, we've seen women, we've seen children. But that is in October. If last year you saw that the airport was painted purple, it was due. Lights was on purple. That was due to us for
Very excellent.
National Domestic Violence. So that's another way people can get involved. Join with us for October. If you're at a company, let's get your whole team wearing purple for that
Well,
weekend. Let's
let's
get the
post it. Let's post about these things. Let's post the resources that you need, whatever. Let's all go follow
yeah.
Alma. Go follow the foundation, LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, right? We're going to do some good. We're all trying to do a little bit better,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
pour into this because this is something that's very, very important. You can count on me for my gifts.
Thank you.
Okay. If you need a stylist, holler at me. I'll come over and style the girls, do whatever,
Yes.
collect some clothes from all of my friends. Because you know how I feel about keeping useless things in the closet. Let's
Yes.
do it, right? Whatever you need. I just this really weighed heavy on my heart. And I'm gonna end with this that my husband said that God will take your pain and bless somebody else. And that's what he did for you. He
Yes.
took your pain and you've blessed thousands of women and men to ensure that they get resources.
Yes.
And I just think that that's what we're all here for. You're using your pain and things that happen to you to empower somebody else. And I bless you for that. I'm so glad that I met you. I'm so happy, right, that we have found each other and we're going to be doing some things together. Yes. And I'm going to count on everybody who's on here because I got a heavy network. So I'm going to count on some of you. I'm going to call on you, right, when the time comes. So when Alma rings the bell, when she puts the purple signal
Yes.
in the sky,
Yes. Let's go. Let's
we're
do
going to answer, right, Alma? We're going to
it.
answer. All
Absolutely.
right. So is there anything lastly that you want to add?
I want to say, if you're listening or you know someone that's going through domestic violence, a lot of times it's easier said than done to reach out or get help. But please be a listening ear. If you know someone that's in that situation, just encourage them to call. Don't bless them out or tell them what they should or should not do because you're not in that situation. But encourage them to call or go on our website, find the resources that they need. We are here for you. And lastly, if you're listening, you're not alone. I know that may be what your abuser has told you, but you are not alone. We are here to help. There are amazing people that want to help you get out of that situation. So I know it's scary, but we are definitely here for you.
Thank you so much, Alma. And everybody, thank you for joining. Yes. Everybody have a good night. Thank you.
Yes.
See you next week.
Yes. Thank
All right.
you. Thank you.
Have a good one. Thank you, Alma.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.